Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the second day meeting of the North Dakota Ethics Commission here this Thursday, February. We are meeting in person at the Sakakawea Room at the state capitol, but we are also live teams. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We call the meeting to order at 9:07 a.m. Let it be noted that all the commissioners are here with the exception of Commissioner Hubrights, who will be a little bit late, but we should be joining us shortly. I'm going to ask the commissioners to look at the agenda for today. Have any additions? I have two things. I have a question about response to the one letter, the GA group. And then also I'd like to have a discussion today about the March, April, and May meeting dates. Consideration for change. So those are my additions. Anything else? All right, hearing none, we will proceed on our agenda. And the first item on today's agenda is discuss and look at the public priority survey. Becca?
Thank you, Logan. So just this morning, commissioners, I uploaded, and you don't need to go pull it up. Addie is going to pull it up on the screen. What is the raw data from the public priority survey? On here, it shows that we have 1,026 responses. I believe one of those was a test because it says, hello, Ethics Commission staff. I'm pretty sure that was me with that. So there's one of them that is a test, but what you can see is the raw data, and I'll show you just a little bit of what it looks like. Can you? Oh, you'll need. So as we alluded to earlier, we are to send this data out to have a non-ethics commission analysis of it, but you can see what it looks like to the substantive responses. So it is a long sheet of data. That is what it is. It is literally raw data. So you guys can look through this. You will see if you go to, you have an
And does it look like a spreadsheet?
it is a spreadsheet. So it downloaded as an Excel doc for us to review, and then we'll provide this to somebody else to do the analysis of it. But I just want to point out a few anecdotal things to the commission. Obviously, this has not been fully analyzed yet, but if you look at the responses in columns 4 and 5, that asks how important is ethical conduct by public officials. And then the next question asks, how confident are you in the state government offices? So what the commissioners can do, I won't do it now, but what you will see is that most people who responded, and I'm using general terms because I haven't sat down and analyzed this, and neither has anybody else, but you will see that for the most part, the responses to how important is ethical conduct by public officials, a lot of individuals responded with extremely important. And when I say the majority, I say, I mean, I think I'm being fairly conservative by saying the majority. Then you move into the next question about how confident are you that state government officials act ethically. This one gets more diversified, that you have some individuals saying very confident, some others saying not confident, some saying very unconfident. Obviously, there's a spectrum here, but what we will be looking at is we will go and tie that to uh, the individual who, how they identified themselves, what identifier they used, whether they're a public employee, a business owner, a resident, a lobbyist, to really get a kind of a demographical breakdown of that. Are you wondering where this is? If you go to the meeting folder, it should just be in the bottom. I didn't label it as anything. It's an Excel doc at the end. And then I want to direct the commission to the very last question, which is question 15. The rest of these are going to have to be analyzed. It asks citizens to rank what issue, if it's very important, somewhat important, not important, or neutral, I guess, as far as different ethical topics. And those make up the majority of these answers. But if you go to the very end, we asked in question 15, is there any additional comments or suggestions for the Ethics Commission? I would highly encourage the commissioners to read through. You can see not everybody did that. It was not a required question, but some of them provided information. Some of them provided things that they like that we're doing, things that they don't like we're doing, things that they think we should do, things that they think we shouldn't do. There is a pattern across here that you will see. There is a pattern of holding public officials accountable because that was the language that was used in the Constitution. There are several references to that. Really, there's an emphasis on doing investigations and then really ensuring that there's a consequence for unethical conduct. I will not summarize it more than that because I don't want to impart anything other than what the public has said, and I don't want to editorialize the comments from the public. But you can see that there are that was a very informative question. Not everybody answered it. Some individuals, you can tell, made comments such as the Ethics Commission doesn't pass laws or doesn't pass rules. So demonstrates that there's some public education needed about the role of the commission. Others just make general comments. So I think that those were informative and helpful. Also, I wanted to just let the commission know, in response to the public survey, we did receive one letter that is included in your materials as attachment. Yep, is it attachment 24? And so that letter, it was a business who felt that their answers did not quite fit into the survey that we had. So they provided us a letter for the commission's review. And Chair Lindquist, I think that's all I have as far as introducing
Well,
the
and
material.
this point, when I add on the agenda additions, that in fact is the one I was asking about. Because it's a formal letter with my name on it, whatever, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, and I knew it was part of that survey thing, but so I guess my question is, do we respond to this? What do we do with this?
Cindy, I can give some background on that. I received a call from Levi Andrus. He's the one who signed the letter from GA Group. And he informed me that they wanted to provide the commission with information, but they didn't feel that their response necessarily fit the criteria in the survey. And he asked if he could send a letter, and I said, absolutely. The commission will always take feedback in whatever form people want to provide it. So he just asked about direction to submit it, if he could submit it to you as the chair. And I said told him that was acceptable, and I will make sure that it gets to you and the other commissioners. So that's the background on it. If you want to respond to it, you can. I don't know if they're expecting a response. I don't think they were. They just wanted to provide the commission with that information.
Okay, so could we just have it as part of the analysis with the survey results?
I think you could, depending on who we ask to do the analysis. I kind of view it as they put more explanation to that question 15. Is there anything additional? They've submitted that in the form of a
Okay.
letter.
So commissioners, would you be okay? So our attachment 24 is this letter from the GA group. And Logan just told us the background, that he had called and then he had asked. And so Logan advised him, yeah, you could submit a letter about, because they didn't think their comments fitted in the survey. They wanted to broaden that. So I'm asking the commission, because I just asked Logan, we use this letter as part of the analysis with the survey results, because that's kind of how it came about.
I think,
Yeah.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I think it's appropriate. And I think that the correspondence from the GA group is an attempt to set out this entity's position, and they didn't feel like they needed to hide behind a survey to say, look, we're professionals and we just thought we'd tell you straight out, this is what we think. I see no issue with that.
Okay.
I do have, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
a couple of questions with respect to the survey in terms of metrics. I know it went live, I think, about a month ago or so. A couple of questions. One, do we have a plan on the length that the survey is or will be open? Two, are we able to objectively determine that the individuals who had submitted responses are North Dakota and real people? And three, do we have any ability to determine if the same person would respond to the survey multiple times in order to, on some level, skew data or skew results? And I yield.
Commission and Commissioner Western, to answer your questions, as far as the length, the public was informed that the survey was live until the 17th, so it closed 2 days
That's right.
ago.
All right. I beg your pardon.
Now, in full transparency, what we did is I read an article about collecting public data, and it said it's always safe to leave it open for 1 or 2 days extra in case somebody thinks that they still want to complete it. And if somebody's willing to, you should let them. So it is still technically open. We will close it at the end of today. And so that will no longer collect data. As far as your second questions as to duplicate responses and are these real people, unfortunately, there is no way to check that. So that is going to be what I would say is a finding or just a note that we can't control that aspect of it. So it's just one of the limitations on how, when you do a public priority survey online that you have. Now, with that said, IT did include a math problem at the bottom of the survey, and that is the bot protector, so that they know that it is not in fact bots who are creating the responses, but it's people. So we know that that is there and that it works. We have used that same thing on our online forms because we have been, what is the term, botted? Like where we get thousands of responses and they're just bots. So we did ask that they put that on there. So as far as the real people, I think we can reasonably presume under the circumstances they are real people. We are relying on people's honesty to the first question as to the residency of the individuals. So those are going to be limitations on the data that we do find.
Sure. Thank you.
How long do you think it'll take for us to get an analysis?
That Chairwoman Lindquist, I'm not entirely sure on that. So we may have to, what we have done is we've looked at the state contracts, we've evaluated who we could potentially use. The question is cost. And so that will be a discussion with procurement.
Does anybody have grad student friends who might need a quick research project?
So one of the ideas is tapping into NDSU, UND, Jamestown, other universities that could potentially do this at a lower or reduced cost.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Can I, one other comment on the survey. So when we sent the survey out, to be perfectly honest, the response rate that we were expecting is, I remember thinking if we got 100 responses, I was going to be very happy. Well, we had over 1,000 responses. The response that we got was much greater than we were ever expecting. As I have been anecdotally discussing the survey with individuals, I keep asking, do you think, is this response rate a lot compared to other instances that you've been involved with public surveys? And the answer is yes. This is something that North Dakota cares about and that people wanted to share their thoughts on. So there were also a few groups that let us know that they shared it with their networks. And so I do think that the word got out there through additional means beyond what we were capable of doing on our end.
Okay, anything else on the survey? And Jared, so Rebecca they have uploaded the raw spreadsheet for the survey, which closed on the 17th, but technically it's still open. They're going to close it at the end of business today in that, but we had over 1,026 responses. It's in the meeting material bottom. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Oh, I hate Excel spreadsheets. I know they work. I like them, but I hate trying to get the stuff off or to read it. It just drives me crazy. And then I get scared. Oh, I'm going to delete that whole column. Oh, no. But it's available for us to just peruse of that. And then they're going to try to find an independent analyst, researcher analyst. So maybe if you have a contact, and just because we don't want it to be us. So when we release it publicly, they brought somebody else in from the outside. So
I have Madam Chair and members, a previous business relationship with the chair of the NDSU Communication Department. I had worked on legal projects for me, and I'm happy to make that acquaintance, but I'm happy to communicate with Executive Director Binstock about that matter as well. This is the sort of thing that departments enjoy.
yes, yeah, that'd be great. And likewise, other commissioners, if you know of anybody, including if you got a grandson, niece, nephew in grad school and is looking for a project. All right. We can move on. So we are going to do planning. And Rebecca sent us a nicely done memo relative to planning. And I don't, Rebecca, it might be better if you took us through this rather than me, since it's your document. And just to set up how we're going to try to do this today, because for me, it's more of a brainstorming. We have 3 new commissioners. We're kind of at a different juncture. We're going to do our best to be ready for January 2027 for legislative session, but also just setting the stage relative to where are we at right now and where are we trying to get to? The basic ideas of strategic planning and that. And I know, and actually I was thinking, well, maybe Pam could lead us through this too. I'm sure your previous background and experience and that, and everybody has ideas. Some people hate planning documents. but it's for me, it's good work. It's good business. All right, thank you. But Rebecca, would you mind just kind of walking us through your document to set the stage for us?
Yes, Chair Lindquist, I will gladly set the stage. So what was provided to the commission is really, this has nothing to do with the actual strategy planning, but it was a document to help you in your mind plan or prepare mentally for strategic planning. And so establishing or what it attempts to do is really provide, and I know that some of this is very elementary type things. These are things that the commission has known for years, is aware of, but really it is establishing the foundation of where the commission's authority comes from, and then taking that and as commissioners, working through what policy initiatives you want as commissioners, et cetera, but having a working basis. So really creating a foundation to work from. So what I did in the memo for you is walked through Article 14 of the Constitution. So as we have said many times, Article 14 is the foundation for the Ethics Commission. Article 14 is what we refer to as direct democracy, meaning that the people of North Dakota are the ones that exercised their power in Article 3 of the Constitution through that initiated measure process and put Article 14 in the Constitution. And so this is as I kind of mentioned this yesterday, but it really is a directive from the people of North Dakota. And the commission in Article 14 was granted two specific authorities, and we call these our essential functions. We've referred to that in other documents as our essential functions. One is to adopt ethics rules related to transparency, corruption, elections, and lobbying. Those are broad policy areas. That is a directive that the commission was given in the Constitution. The second directive was to investigate alleged violations of rules adopted by the commission. Article 14, there are certain components of Article 14 the commission is specifically supposed to investigate. And then the term is related state laws. There's also this authority that comes from the Century Code. So there's actually two sources of authority from the Century Code, but we really focus on just one in strategic planning. The second is the complaint process, right? The legislature created the complaint process for how individuals can bring allegations to the commission, and then they created this legislative process that the commission follows. So that conferred certain authority or delegated certain duties to the commission in that regard. But I don't highlight that here. What the other authority that I focus on, or that I kind of create this baseline knowledge for the commission, is 546604.2, which is advisory opinions. So that was added during the 2021 legislative session, and that authorizes the commission to issue advisory opinions. So the first section of this strategic planning preparation is really just simplifying each section of Article 14 and what it does. So I'm not going to walk through those step by step. I want to jump to Section 3 of Article 14, which is where the Ethics Commission is created. So Section 3 creates the Ethics Commission. It says the Ethics Commission is hereby established, period. That is it. It is established. It then grants authority, as we just talked, in those two areas to adopt ethics rules related to transparency, corruption, elections, and lobbying, and then also to do investigation. The other two things I want to point out to the commission, we've talked about it in a general sense before, is that Section 3 specifically requires the Legislative Assembly to, quote, adequately fund. Adequately fund is not defined. We'll talk about that later. The commission to carry out functions and duties. So when it says duties of the commission, those are duties that have been delegated to the commission, either by the legislature or by the people. So specifically, when we talk about adequately funding the commission to carry out its functions and duties, keep in mind those duties include adopting rules related to transparency, corruption, elections, and lobbying, investigating, and then also those statutory or those things that are delegated to the commission from the legislature. And then it also establishes the membership, how commissioners are appointed, etc. Section 4 also has some important things that the commission should be aware of. It dictates or it requires, it proclaims that Article 14 is self-executing. There was no need for anything else to happen. Article 14 was effective and it was self-executing, and that they may enact laws. Anybody may enact laws that facilitate, safeguard, or expand, but may not, the actual language, I just have hamper in there. It's hamper, restrict, or impair, Article 14. So it also articulates that if there is a conflict between Article 14 and another constitutional provision, Article 14 does control. If you look at the historical timeline, Chair Lindquist has made reference a few times to the fact that we are a toddler. And the commission really is. So you can see this timeline, and I emphasize this many times when I testify before the legislature, that although the commission was adopted by the voters in 2018, commissioners were not appointed and had their first meeting until almost a year later in September of 19. And so September 12th of 2019 was your first meeting, I believe, over at the Heritage Center, if I remember correctly. I was not around, but I've seen pictures. You did.
Right.
Well, there you go. So then you can see in January, they hired the first executive director. And then from there on, there have been complaint rules, lobbyist gifting rules, quasi-judicial rules, conflict of interest rules. And then there is some also what I would call operational notes along the way. The commission originally operated out of an office on the north side of town. It was a very large office, which maybe right now would be a little bit nicer than our small space. But we also had security concerns for the space. There was no security. It was a glass door. There was many times as executive director, I was there by myself. And so it did not create a very safe environment, particularly as we did see an uptick in complaints and did see an uptick in calls that we would get from individuals who had grievances and, may or may not threaten the commission or commission staff.
Well,
So-
since we're talking about all this and what's not noted, and it doesn't have to be noted, but when we began that fall of 19, y'all recall 2020, 21
Yep.
COVID pandemic. And we had secured that lease thinking, but essentially 2.5 years, almost 3 years, it was all virtual. So that played into it also.
Mhm. Cindy, if I remember correctly, there were also discussions about just accessibility for the public that were more accessible in the Capitol for public than up far north.
Accessibility and then also visibility. What is this body? What is this thing, this North Dakota Ethics Commission? And then that's kind of how we got to looking, we probably should be in the Capitol. So yeah.
So we thankfully did get out of that lease. It was a 10-year lease, but we did thankfully get out of it. And we now have our space at the Capitol. So the other thing that's noted in the historical timeline is the addition of staff. So prior to the 2023 legislative session, the commission only had one full-time FTE, which was the executive director. So in September of 2023, based on the legislature's approvals of 2 additional FTEs, we added staff That was our first major staff increase when we went from 1 to 3. Commissioner Hubrights, I know that you had been looking at staffing numbers for other ethics commissions. I did pull some of that data. It's on my very professional Post-it note. So if you have questions later on about that, just to give a background on that. But throughout this whole time, you can see that there were strategic plans adopted in 2020, 2022, and then the most recent one in 2024. That was under the Burgum administration. I'm not sure what the Armstrong administration sees, but we still should be doing strategic planning nonetheless. During the last legislative session, we did make substantial requests of the legislature. One of the bills failed, which was the commission's backed bill to improve the complaint process. But some of those changes did end up going into our budget bill. And then we also had the bill that we worked with the Secretary of State on to get the statement of interest on a yearly basis. That legislation did pass. So I also made a note that in May of 2025, we had a similar meeting to this over at the Heritage Center after legislative session to kind of regroup from legislative session. And it was at that meeting, based on the lack of additional FTEs that the commission received during legislative session, that the commission asked us to deprioritize education and outreach. It went entirely on the back burner. Before that, it made up about 33% of Logan's workload, 33% of my workload. And since then, I think it's probably made up less than 5% of either of ours. And then in 2025, we also had the first annual report and that first ethics violation. Now, a lot of individuals, and this is really just for public information, wonder, wow, you went from 2019 to 2025, and that was the first time there was an ethics violation. Yes, that is a true fact. We have to keep in mind that most complaints prior to October of 2022 were summarily dismissed for lack of jurisdiction, and what I would call were not substantive complaints at that point. It was not until October of 2022, so less than 3 years before that, that the commission really received its first substantive investigation required complaints. I included the current mission statement that I know Cindy wants to talk about. And then as attachments, you will see the 3 strategic plans that were worked on, how those evolved over time. I had a link in there as well. So some of the long-term goals that we identified in 2024 were comprehensive enactment of substantive ethics laws. We saw that as a substantial action of the commission that was needed. That included a revision of current laws and then also looking to what ethics laws in the areas of transparency, corruption, and elections and lobbying we needed. That also required a lot of time. That was the discussion back then. The other thing was to, in 2024, have effective internal processes. This is why we asked for the case management system during the 2025 legislative session. I also need to give a nod to Logan on this particular strategic plan or strategic initiative. When Logan started as general counsel, one of the things that he really focused on was creating systems for when complaints came in on the legal side. And so prior to 2022, there were no systems for what happens when a complaint comes in because there were no substantive, or there hadn't been any substantive complaints. So I want to give props to Logan. He really has focused on that and standardizing how we work through a complaint. And then fostering a culture of integrity across state government. This really is talking about the cultural norms that needed to shift once the Ethics Commission came in. We've talked about this a little bit, and we actually did a webinar on this about the culture of the North Dakota government since its inception and how we got to the Ethics Commission. It's a great hour-and-a-half webinar if anybody wants to learn about the history of corruption in North Dakota, or just unethical conduct. Some of it wasn't corruption, some of it was. And then also focused on creating educational resources back in 2024. That particular strategic initiative was abandoned at the end of, or deprioritized, I should say, at the end of the 25 session. So we also had the annual report that came out in 2025 for the first time. And then we also created educational initiatives that really guided how we would provide educational resources to stakeholders. So with that, that really sets the stage for your strategic planning. I also provided you guys with questions that Cindy and I talked about. And really, some of them are introspective and some of them are long-term thoughts about where you want to see the commission in the next 2, 4, 6. I think of strategic planning in 10-year terms, but that's a long ways out. So 6 years is more reasonable. But that, I think, walks through that, Cindy, and gives an introduction or a launching point for the commission to take it.
Okay, it's a lot. It's a lot just to think about, let alone to review everything and kind of how did we get to where we're at and then where are we going? But any comments just to start us?
I'll start, Madam Chair. So it's hard to know where to start. There are a lot of important things we need to consider, I think, but the two that jump out to me is, in no particular order, but funding and staffing. As Rebecca mentioned, I am compiling information from across the country from other states' ethics commissions, and I plan to share that with you, Pam, because it has been suggested that we would have a working group. My goal was to have that done before this week, but it didn't get done. I'm probably 3/4 of the way there. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at all states, how they're funded, how they're staffed. And then I think we probably will zero in on the constitutional ethics commissions across the US. There are some that are structured very differently than ours. And, you can imagine Texas has way more employees than North Dakota would ever need, that sort of thing. But I am putting that together and I plan to share that with Pam before sharing it with everyone. The other item that sticks out to me is I'm gonna use the verbiage in the memo here. We need to enact substantive ethics rules. I think we need to make that a priority. I have some other thoughts on that, perhaps for later on in the conversation, but I just wanted to share those two things that stick out to me at least.
Those are good, good beginning. Other commissioners?
Madam Chair and members, and I don't know if it's appropriate that those of us who have the least amount of experience have the greatest amount of aspirations for the Ethics Commission, but the aspirations are indeed sincere. And so I had asked myself, where do I want to see the Ethics Commission in a year and a half? And I say a year and a half because I know that that is after the conclusion of a legislative session. And when I put pen to paper, it seems to me that I want a public in the state of North Dakota that knows and trusts that the Ethics Commission is conducting appropriate but not overzealous oversight of public officials, candidates, and lobbyists to effectuate our mission. But that's a pie in the sky, non-specific goal. And the question is, how do we get there? And some of my thoughts certainly mirror those of Commissioner Hubright. We need sufficient staff, infrastructure, and resources to expeditiously administer complaints. Additionally, we need a world where there is a clear understanding of the lane in which the commission operates vis-a-vis ethics rules, advisory opinions, and the like. Taking our baby steps towards getting there, but that is an aspiration. We want to have a relationship of mutual understanding and respect with the legislative and the executive branches of government. And we, I think, need to think about education in the sense that ethics commissioners and staff are out in the public, both to service clubs, schools, as well as actively participating in the public discourse. When the public knows what the Ethics Commission is doing, then there's frankly less to talk about. Those are the things I see as aspirational goals were I the person who could wave an Ethics Commission magic wand. I yield.
Oh, thank you. Another aspirational goal would be for us to get to a place where everyone, all the citizens and all the different branches of governments all agree and understand what our authority is and what it isn't, so that they can have trust for this commission and know that we're operating within our line of authority at all times.
You're here.
All right. One of the things, mainly, and I liked your questions, Rebecca, because it kind of really, it takes you into different places and thought processes, particularly as one of the original members of the commission. Oh yeah, why did I apply to do this? Kind of makes you think and think differently. And granted, it was 6, 7 years ago or however long ago now it's been in that. But one of the things in doing our planning that I would like us to consider, and I guess it's definitions, it's terminology. I think we know when we say ethics, what we mean, but do we? And I'm not so sure sometimes some of these cases that we've seen, you know, the public has different perceptions and different definitions. And so I think we as a body, I think we would do right by getting some definitions for ourselves and our work, including, yes, ethics in general, because ethics is a subjective thing. It can be philosophical, it can be touchy-feely, but it can be practical, lawyerly, law, justice, all that, you know, whatever. But even when we talk about commission laws, and because I'm looking at the memo, so when I circled it, I'm like, okay, we got laws, then there's rules. And then there's these other things that kind of play into a penalty sanction. I mean, so if we can, and as we do this work, identify some of these terms and let's make definitions. Because then that gives us, and I know I hate doing that too, because then you're gonna have something come up that, oh, we didn't think of that or whatever, and interpretation is another thing and whatever, but hey, we got some pretty smart lawyers around the table with us. So I think we could come to some good definitions to help guide this work. So it's, what are ethics? You know, when we're saying rules, what are rules? And the distinction between a rule and a law, you know, and that, and its application, and under our venue, under our umbrella as an ethics commission. So, yeah. The other thing is, this is a planning session, and to guide our staff and to come to terms with, I think we should look at the timeline, because I agree, I'm kind of focused. January 27 for me is like 2 months away. Are we ready for January 27? Well, we're not. And we've got different sticky notes to ourselves about what that is. And for me, yeah, it's funding an FTE. And I've already told Rebecca, we're going to go after double the staff. No ifs, ands, and buts, just we need to double the staff. And it's probably more than that. But so I appreciate our new commissioners jumping right in and taking that on. But planning is usually in increments or whatever. It's usually a 5-year thing, 5, 6 years, depending. I mean, and it's up, we get to decide, but here's the short term is legislative session, January 27, the short term thing, 1, 2 years, and then 3, 4 years. Because I think that's good due diligence for anybody, any organization in that, and however we want it. But then I also, as I've done planning over my life and career in professional capacities, it's like, I don't want it to be about, we don't have money, we don't have resources. So there's an aspect to this work about how do we know the public trusts its government? And again, well, that's that touchy-feely maybe, or the philosophical thing. And maybe that, for me, when I've done planning, it's like, okay, we don't want to forget about that. So maybe we had to acknowledge it and we put it in a parking lot thing. It's not going to go away. And everything we do plays into that, those more maybe longer term things than that about the work. So, and there's different ways to do that, different, I guess, framing and formatting relative to a plan. So, okay, that's my 2 cents for now. Well, and then maybe to get us started, I thought maybe we could start by looking at that mission statement. Because we did it rather quickly, and meaning there was like good consensus when we built that mission statement. Is it still applicable? Does it still make sense? I don't know. And just as a starting point, but that's my 2 cents. So I've heard from the commissioners, but I would also like to hear from our staff. You're in the nitty gritty of all this. And what are your hopes and dreams for this body and who you are as the employees of the North Dakota Ethics Commission?
Like you want to hear now, Cindy? So from a staff perspective, we would like to get directive from the commission. And that sounds like a cop out maybe, but it's not. But high priorities, aspirational things, we will figure out and take it from there and figure out the logistics or what the roadblocks might be and how, if there is one thing that I think our staff is very good at, it is creative outside the box thinking. Many times because we do have a lot of roadblocks put up in front of us and we have to figure out how to go around those. So I think getting a policy directive from those of you who are appointed and then handing it over with, guidance from you as to how to effectuate the aspirational goals, I guess, that you all have talked about. And when we talk about how we, I'm gonna get on my ethics soapbox for just a moment, so please bear with me. But how do we know that the public trusts its government? That in and of itself is an aspirational goal. And the whole idea is that you create open lines of communication. And when people feel more involved in their government, they tend to trust their government more. So we have looked as a staff at smaller case studies of how you build up public trust in government, whether they're in developing democracies and small counties. And inevitably, there is a cycle that happens. And an ethics commission or having an entity that provides standards is step one in that cycle. And so we will gladly do the legwork. We will gladly do what the commission directs us to do, I guess you could say. But yes, but pulling to those aspirational goals. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
And I think that's, so in all the planning I've done, again, over my years, it's, you always, what's that North Star thing? What is that? And I think you've just articulated it, Rebecca, because yeah, the public's trust in its government. You know, it's a pretty simple statement just to say it, but then, oh, wait a minute, what is it? And how do we do that? And how do we get there? And why isn't there trust? It's all these things. So, yeah. So I kind of, for me, for me, it's a good reminder of, yeah, that's that aspirational North Star goal. And yeah, maybe that bears repeating too, and that should guide both the planning document, and then the work. Jared, were you going to comment?
You suggested that maybe the mission statement is a good place to start. We don't have to go into a big rabbit hole here. I like the mission statement as it stands, and if we were to not make any changes, it certainly wouldn't hurt my feelings. One maybe semantic thought is that I don't think we need the words, the mission of the North Dakota Ethics Commission in the mission statement. And then also the mission statement doesn't, it's tells us what we're going to do. Strengthen the public confidence in the government. It doesn't tell us how. And so I thought maybe we add something like through education and enforcement of ethics laws or rules, whichever word we want to use. So we could perhaps shorten the mission statement to something like this: to strengthen public confidence in North Dakota's government by ensuring transparency and accountability through education and enforcement of ethics laws. Something like that.
Can you say that one more time, please?
To strengthen public confidence in North Dakota's government by ensuring transparency and accountability through education and enforcement of ethics laws or rules.
One more time. To
strengthen public confidence in North Dakota's government by ensuring transparency and accountability through education and enforcement of ethics laws / rules.
Do you want to, maybe Logan can give us the breakdown on the rules versus laws, just so we put that one to bed.
That's a loaded question.
Yep, it is.
There's levels to law, right? And just like anything, so a rule is a law. It's just a different type of law. It's not a statute. It doesn't go through the legislative process, but it is a piece of law that is made pursuant to the Constitution. Or if you look at executive branch agencies, they're doing it pursuant to legislation. So there's that distinction with the commission. But a law can include a rule. Now there's there's the distinction between the Constitution, statutes, and rules, which make up the body of law in a nutshell.
That's what I was looking for. Laws.
I would add that in some organizations, there not only is a mission statement, but a vision statement. And a vision statement, I think, is really effective because it really, it's like way big and way out there. I mean, I think it'd be at least worthwhile talking about what our vision is for, like you say, Rebecca, 10 years, someplace down the line.
Before we leave the mission, I'm like, because I scratched out those words you scratched out. So I'm like, oh gosh, he thinks like me, or I think like him. But then I questioned the word strengthen. And if that was the right word, I think it is, but I circled it and then I put improve. Are they the same thing? Do they mean the same thing? And again, the words, but, and then I didn't take it as far as you did with the through, which I like. And because of all our more recent discussions, I guess I prefer rule versus law. I don't know if that matters, but I just rule, and if it means that, now, okay, fine, we all know what it means, but rule just has, I don't know, a different connotation.
Cindy, I'm gonna just comment on a kind of, and it actually brings in Mark's comment about staying in the lane of the commission. So the commission doesn't make legislation, right? We do not pass legislation. The commission is specifically directed in the Constitution to adopt rules. So the use of the word rule versus law signals a limitation that the commission recognizes on its own authority, that it's within the authority granted to it by the commission, and that it's just, not just, that's the wrong word, but it's rules, not anything outside the scope of what the commission has in the Constitution. So I like the use of the word rule because I think it helps identify the lane of the commission better.
Madam Chair and members, if I may comment briefly upon the issue of missions or purposes, and I can fall back comfortably upon my days at Concordia College. At the college, there is the mission stone, which students walk by every day, and people like me end up memorizing after we've been there for 4 years. And the mission was one sentence, and it was created by, among other people, Dr. Carl Bailey, who is a physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project in years gone by. But I think a great deal of thought about purpose and mission is appropriate. The purpose of Concordia College is to send into the world thoughtful and informed men and women dedicated to the Christian life. Now, that is not the mission of the Ethics Commission, nor should it be. But the point is a succinct sentence that denotes an aspiration, something that contains no surplus. I don't necessarily have a problem with using the word mission or purpose as a preamble to a mission statement, although I do ask the question, and not rhetorically, our goal is that I think North Dakota citizens have confidence in their government rather than citizens from other states or outside public. Is it important to keep the distinction that our mission is solely for the people of North Dakota from whom this commission was created? I think that the words ensuring, promoting transparency and accountability are appropriate, and adding the words education and enforcement or administration are appropriate. I don't know at what point that becomes too much, but those are some thoughts I have generally speaking about the matter. I yield.
Okay, would you read it again?
Yeah. That's why maybe I can put it up too. Or maybe Jared can just read it again. Because it wasn't yet. Only idea. Don't trust my transcription.
To strengthen public confidence in North Dakota's government by ensuring transparency and accountability through education and enforcement of ethics rules.
Yeah, and I think I like strengthen. Because again, it just, because improve implies,
Improvement,
That is bad
improvement
now.
needed.
yeah.
So I just pulled up Article 14 and you can see my computer up on this is where, correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, and I feel like I should be able to narrow this in or zoom in. Oh, there we go. Right here, right? Okay. So this first sentence, I believe this is where the mission statement originated, that the purpose of Article 14 was so that, Mark, this gets to your question. So the people of North Dakota, that was specifically included in there. Yes, that's where it is. But can I talk about this one first? Okay. That the people of North Dakota need information to choose candidates for office, vote on ballot measures, and ensure that their representatives are accountable. So that is the first sentence of Article 14. And then if you go down to Section 3, this is where the mission statement effectively came from, is combining that first sentence of Section 1 with this. In order to strengthen, that's for the strengthen the confidence of the people of North Dakota in their government and to support open, ethical, and accountable government, the North Dakota Ethics Commission is hereby created. So just wanted to point that out. So this is what has been discussed today is in line with
Mhm.
what is in the Constitution in those two instances.
If we're looking to trim it, I mean, I like the word transparency, but perhaps it could just say by ensuring accountability. If we wanted to remove unnecessary words, but
I think transparency is important.
I like it too.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems to me, if I remember the conversations when the people brought forward the vote, that was like, I think, a consistent
Transparency, yeah.
word that was used in all those public forums. And that, so yeah.
Madam Chair and members, and I as well, and seek to criticize the language up there as much as think out loud. Enforcement rules. It is true that the Constitution provides the authority to promulgate rules. However, isn't the thought here, is it about the addition of ethics complaints? I think on some level, that's the purpose, to know that such complaints are being reviewed and administered appropriately, which inherently acts to enforce rules. I don't know if one is any better or worse than the other, but have to make a decision on any of this at the drop of a hat. And I think thinking about that is at least worth thought.
Rebecca, it after enforcement, my version says of ethics rules.
So could we drop enforcement? This is the mission statement. It's more again, the philosophical guide for the work.
Mark mentioned the word administration. That's a option. Administration
Admi-
of ethics rules.
Yeah, there you
Is
go.
that less harsh, perhaps?
An argument can be made that to administer also inherently considers promulgation. That's getting pretty Jeopardy and Trivial Pursuit-esque, but
And does administration cover that investigative piece? I would think it does.
I would think it does.
Yeah, I mean, as an administrator, yeah, I would. Okay, so the mission of the North Dakota Ethics Commission is to strengthen public confidence in North Dakota's government by ensuring transparency and accountability through education and administration of ethics rules.
Two additional thoughts. First, I like a succinct mission statement. because again, we're here on behalf of the public. But also if we include the administration of ethics rules in our mission statement, I think that points back to us to establish said rules. So I like that too.
I like all of that versus the, just promoting. I mean, it's just so much stronger.
Can I add something for the conversation? When we talk about ethics rules, I don't want the commission to forget that that second objective of administering that piece of it, when you investigate alleged violations, it includes more than just the rules. It includes any state law related to transparency, corruption, elections, and lobbying. So I just want to throw that in the ring for your discussion, if that's the intent of limiting it or not, but just want to.
Well, yeah, but again, I think when I brought up the word investigate, in my leadership capacity over the years, when I talk about administration, it includes those pieces. And that would be my understanding of using the word administration of ethics rules.
Well, and if I may, to agree with Madam Chair and to further elucidate the comments by staff counsel, our established rules in 11502 include the complaint process, which can include anything that ends up being an ethics complaint. So it works rhetorically kind of like a grab bag, if you would. And so I would agree that statutes and ethics rules and other stuff can be a part of an ethics complaint. So agree, I yield.
So where are we? I think we have a new mission statement personally, but
I don't like making hasty decisions, and I'd like to kick the tires for a month to let it percolate, but
Not ready to get the granite stone yet.
I'm not ready for the team tattoos or anything else, no, but I like it. I think that it is succinct and it echoes the appropriate language of the Constitution. I like it. I just hate making a hasty choice.
It might be after we're done discussing a lot of other things, we tweak it a little bit or.
give us some time to ponder and I can think more about, oh, what does this word mean? All right. So we have general consensus that we like this draft, this version for consideration in adopting a new mission statement or a revised mission statement.
An updated mission
Updated.
statement.
Better word, updated. Okay. Consideration for a vision statement. And Pam, did you think of anything? Do you have some words for us?
No, I don't have any words right now, but I think, it goes back to some of the things that we all talked about aspiring to. And if we think about what do we want it to be after we've accomplished everything that we need to put in place, I'm not sure what the words are yet, though.
Well, Pam, I think the words you used earlier and some of Mark's words as well, as far as a vision statement, living in a world where the public understands what we do and trust that we're doing what
That
they
we're
want
doing
us
it
to
right,
do,
yeah.
and that we have appropriate and professional working relationships with the communities, entities that we have authority over.
Yes.
But something along those lines is the vision, I think, of where we want to be someday.
I think you're absolutely right. That is our vision. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Let's have Rebecca read back what she typed.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Sorry. Thank you. So Pam, I typed out that question. What do we want the Ethics Commission to be after we get everything in place?
We want ourselves to go out of business?
No.
Oh.
And then having the public understand what we do. So what when I say we, meaning the commission does, and then the public trusts we're doing what they asked us to do. Right? Because that's the relationship.
And that they also understand what our authority is,
Mm.
or our kind of the whole ball of wax that.
I'm gonna write that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
So Rebecca, on the third bullet. Right now you have up there with branches of government
Yeah.
and I think we need to add. Oh, what, Logan, can you help me with the right term here? I don't want to call it the regulated community. But I'm just thinking lobbyists and other individuals.
That's the generally acceptable term. They use that at Kogel quite a bit, the regulated community.
Sure. And others in the stakeholders in the regulated community, something like that.
I'm gonna ask a question because Pam's question spurred my thought process on this. And Pam asked, what do we want the commission to look like after everything's in place? I think I would challenge us all to think of what do we want state government to look like after we have everything in
There you
place?
go. Yeah.
And that it's beyond, right? Because our mission is not to effectuate the commission necessarily, but all of government, all of state government.
Absolutely.
So can I add that question just from a thought process standpoint?
So, I mean, really just talking out loud, our vision is to have a state government that is ethical and transparent at all times. So much underneath all that stuff.
I'm just typing that out, Pam.
Yeah.
Well, I like that one. It's like that. I think that's really the underpinning of our work and who we are and what we're trying to get to in that. So, but yeah, but how do we articulate that into a vision statement?
Commissioner Goodman kindly lent me a $1 bill from his pocket, for which I promise I will return. And since we're talking about vision and mission and aspiration and all these things where I feel like I like talking about all these, and that's what the whole purpose of a planning session is. I would direct the commission to think about the back of the $1 bill, which has on it a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid are the Roman numerals 1776, which I think are about 250 years ago. And the picture on the dollar bill, that is the pyramid, is supposed to represent the United States of America. And the interesting part about the pyramid is that it's not finished. There is a gap in the pyramid, which is supposed to represent the understanding that the pyramid is always continuing to be built, and you're never really done. There's also some Latin in there that states annuit copetus, which to my understanding, someone told me means always renewing. And so as much and as often as we may have rules in place and infrastructure in place and staff in place, the mission continues, and that is the thoughtful administration of ethics-related complaints. And so job will never be done, and that's okay. I yield. Give back the dollar bill.
All right, to counter that, because I don't like the pyramid, sorry, because to me, it's hierarchical. And that means different things to different people, different groups, organizations and stuff. And it's like, no, sorry. And I view that question about why did I apply to do this? To sit on the North Dakota Ethics Commission, and I do believe in public service and hearing, I like hearing different voices, different context, helps me better understand, helps me to change my mind in that. For me, when this vote passed, I was so proud of North Dakota. Look at it again, coming together, doing something that they truly believe in. And now here I am, oh my God. So it's like an awesome responsibility. But in the 6 years I've served on this commission and looking at the complaints and the processes and what's come before us, it's like, really, really? Some of it's very stupid, but I hate to say it that way. Maybe it's ignorant because there's no place. The people didn't have a place, and so we've dismissed a lot of cases because it's not our jurisdiction. And yet there's validity because that person doesn't understand something or how that process worked and where do I go? I don't like what I'm seeing or hearing or that thing that got written or whatever. And what do you mean I can't have input in that? So my point about hierarchies and pyramids, sorry, what goes around comes around. I like circles because it's more embracing. And I am Dakota. So I am an indigenous person of the state. And circles mean a lot to me personally, but also professionally, because it's contextual about what that is. And in my tenure as a tribal college president, I would tell people when I went home to be the president, and tribal colleges are these separate things, but we have to follow all these other things, these other rules, accreditation, da, da, da. But I would tell people, we're putting those boxes into the circle. Which is, it's a very cultural thing, but as a good business person, as a good manager, leader, administrator, it's like common sense relative to people being heard and people having a place to be heard in a non-threatening environment in that. And so I'm not voting for no pyramid thing. And I know you weren't, Mark. I know you weren't. I like why you brought it up, because you're so right about that little piece up there with the eye, because that's the other aspect of our work. This is public work. And as citizens, we're doing our best to do this. And where are we at? And again, part of why I'm appreciative that we're doing planning right now, because I'm going to say, okay, I think we're into that pubescent teenage phase of our life. And you know how teenagers can be. So let's stand our ground. Because to me, and I've raised teenagers and I've got teenage grandkids. Oh my gosh, really? It's like hearing them, because they don't know what they don't know and the frustrations they experience and stuff. And that's kind of where we are. But at the same time, they have very valid statements or points. Here we are. So sorry. I yield to borrow your term that I like too now.
Thank you. Our work is never going to be done. So we really can't ever say that we want a government that is, perfectly ethical, because we're never, ever going to get there. Everything changes and evolves all the time. So I mean, I think that's an excellent point. And as we get closer to what we think our vision is, our vision will probably change also. I mean, as we work towards it.
Well, Madam Chair, if I may channel my inner Commissioner Western, since we're using props. That I had a mentor who told me that this is my wedding ring. Circle is forever, to use your metaphor as well. Perhaps, and I have my thesaurus open, Commissioner Weston. Perhaps something in the mission statement, or the vision statement, like a perpetual endeavor or a ongoing pursuit, something that gets to your point about this really does not end, but we're going to continue trying to get there.
It's good.
What about
And very well said. Thank you.
What about adding the word actually prior to strengthen?
In the mission statement, perpetually.
We're just talking here.
Or
So-
too many words, and maybe perpetual should be that vision thing. But yeah, no, great.
So when we talk about, I talked a little bit about emerging democracies and how they build trust in their systems or in small communities. There's several professors that do research on this, and they refer to it as a circle or a cycle. So that one thing happens and it comes in, and then it can continually go around, and then different individuals or stakeholders come in, and that's what keeps the circle or the cycle going. So I do like that analogy because that's supportive of the research that's been done in this area. So I like the use of the word perpetual or ongoing because there's always an adjustment that we do have to make. A different issue will come up, or what we once thought was a very sound system or in place, right? The world changes and different issues come up. We have AI introduced, we have different ethical concerns that may be prompted. And so, and based on whether it's, case law or practice or technology, there's going to be continual updating that has to happen. So that continuum is a good idea or good thought from my perspective. Take it for a grain of salt.
I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, who wants to take this on to try to draft a vision statement with all of that? Because this has been a great discussion. It's really good. And why don't you guys think about it?
I think
'Cause-
we should take a short break
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
come back, and maybe our minds will be
Well,
clearer.
well, no, and I'm thinking maybe let's leave it where it's at,
Okay.
and that be our homework
Oh, okay.
as we digest and regurgitate and all that before the next meeting. It's just, there's so many good things in there. So, all right, I'm going to say, let's take a 10-minute break. I have 10:30 a.m. We will reconvene at 10:40 a.m. We are in recess. It's 10:45 and we're a couple minutes late, but we're never too late. So I'm going to reconvene the North Dakota Ethics Commission here at 10:45 a.m. And we will continue our discussion about strategic planning, and we're finishing up our discussion on the vision statement. And I think we've got some good prompts. So if we're okay with, as we talked about both the mission statement and the vision statement, that let's kind of ponder this in our discussion. And one of the commissioners wants to take a stab at drafting something for us before our next meeting in that, if you're adventurous enough, or we could all try to do some wordsmithing for a vision statement and kind of put it at that. And I'm not sure, so I appreciate us doing this because again, I think having this discussion sets the stage and I'm glad my question about updating the mission statement, which I think we've done now. Or it's in work, it's in process. But I mentioned I really appreciated the prompt questions that Rebecca asked us. So I don't know should we take the time to kind of answer some of these, a few of these, just to have a discussion? Because where I want to get us to is to have, and I'm calling them planning priorities. And I don't know if that's the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use. We've called them initiative. I know they've been called goals, and there's different words relative to what that is, but if we can agree to, as we develop a plan, to set those priorities and or whatever term we're going to use, and then also a timeline for those priorities. And then we've kind of started that, but maybe to get us going, maybe let's have a little round robin. Why did you apply and what do you hope to accomplish? It might just be interesting for us to hear from each other and yeah, so. And Jared, I'm going to put you on the spot. We'll start there and come this way.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, I was and still am a member of the public. I used to work for the state of North Dakota, and like you, I was proud of North Dakota when the Ethics Commission was created. I think there's a perception out there that perhaps perhaps some of our publicly elected and appointed officials need oversight and a lack of an understanding in the public of how that process works. I just believe in the mission of this body, the old one, and perhaps the new draft one, and I wanted to be part of that. What do I hope to accomplish? What I wrote down is to establish ethics rules that put accountability at the forefront.
Judge Goodman?
Yeah, I was. In state government as a judge, a lot of years, and I was on the governor's board. It's on the, not seem to get things. It's on a couple of commissions or committees, and I saw what I felt were ways of doing in North Dakota. Haven't come to those yet, but sometime. So you're too sure will come issues that are still outstanding. State government come to a lot of the other issues that still out there. There's enough problems at an ethics commission. I feel
I'll echo a little bit of Judge said. So I had 32 years in state government. Retired from that, then I lobbyist, and I was a lobbyist when the Ethics Commission was created. And I looked at who was applying, and I together, and I thought even then that would be I think I could put some of my knowledge to use on that commission. I didn't apply because I was to do that at all at that time. But then as the years went on, and I'm no longer a lobbyist, and I still felt the same way, that I think I have a lot of knowledge that could be applied to that ethics commission. And at that time, there was so much negativity going around. I really didn't know how it was all going to get straightened out. But I thought maybe I could.
Chair, and it's not dissimilar. Commissioner Sharp, I have some experience working in legislative body, some experience and just on the so many years, I thought skill set could to in terms of how it's with other as well as improves internal administration. Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Smith goes to Washington to use the skill sets that see if I have to make something that's good.
I think we have so much in common. And I have mentioned that I do suffer from old lady memory syndrome. And so trying to remember back, why did I apply? Like, oh, gee, yeah, why did I apply? Well, I was encouraged to, and by legislators. At the time, I was a tribal college president here in North. I'm a native. Yeah, I suppose I could put it. I truly believe in public service. I appreciate elected officials, people who step up to do these kinds. But what was more significant for me at that moment in time, and part of why I applied, I was a tribal college president in Fort Totten, North Dakota. So education, but also role models. One of the things I was adamant as a tribal college president to telling my faculty and staff, we are role models. Yes, we have that classroom thing, that teaching and learning thing, but we have to exemplify what it is we're teaching. And again, I've mentioned already, I was so proud of the public and the leadership who brought forward this, and I agreed. It's like there's a need to improve and to break down some of the walls, some of the things, the misperceptions of how things work. Oh, and that whole thing about transparency and that. But looking at it as an educator, how do we teach our children, our grandchildren, our students, and what that is? So that's what prompted me. Like all of you, my colleagues, I like to contribute. I don't take these things lightly. Service, do my best to be prepared. Homework, all in that, and the creating of relationships, the nurturing of relationships, but hopefully also how that point about how do we make it better? There's all kinds of things that go along with not just one thing. Just all that, and I also, there was an aspect of, because I have worked with the legislative body many, many times, and their perception of the commission is out to get them. No, I don't want to get anybody, on that. And so diminishing some of the misperceptions and misconcepts of what it is, which is education in that, but the overarching goal for me again is making a contribution in a good way, learning, also changing my opinion, perceptions in that, and just advancing the work and supporting the staff in that work. So it's we've come a long way in our 6 years, and I am very proud of the work. I still am very proud to sit at the table as I get to know my colleague. And not just being impressed with credentials, but, oh my gosh, they're normal people. Because sometimes we forget, we get these big ideas, judge, you know, but that humanity part of relationship building and bringing that into the fold of the work and never forgetting that. And I truly believe that's North Dakota. That's who we are. Yeah, we have differences, have issues, but we come to the table, find the common ground, go from there. And that is the work of the North Dakota Ethics Commission. So thank you for that moment. All right, so her prompt questions, that was one of the first ones. We've kind of already done the mission one now. We're already done with that, but I think we need to do a little bit of hard work. So I'm going to ask Rebecca, you want to take us through the rules thing and related to transparency, corruption, elections and lobbying, and just to help guide us as we think about what do we want to set as priorities for our plan. And then I think we can, as we think of those priorities, we can determine time frame. Because we've all acknowledged January 2027, that's a big thing. It's looming. That's the next big hurdle or thing we have to address or get to, and that how are we going to get there? But then what's maybe 2 years out or 3 years out on that? But if you want to kind of help us, Rebecca, through that, I think that it'll give us some prompts.
Thank you, Chairwoman Lindquist. Okay, so I'm going to briefly, and I'm, excuse me, I am going to start by just with our previous strategic review or strategy review that we did back in 2024. And I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview. And I think we should kick it over to Jared for the ideas that he had provided. I'll put those up on the screen. But I am going to go, this is attachment, I believe it's attachment 26. And so it's the most recent one from 2024, and I am going to be on page 4. So back in 2024, we identified, now I know that Chairwoman Lindquist does not love this name, but it is what it is. We will call them goals. They're called big, hairy, audacious goals. Really, it's looking 5 to 10 years ahead. So in 2024, we identified 4 of these, and I talked about them earlier, but the first one relates to Ethics Commission rules. And this is comprehensive enactment and enforcement of substantive ethics rules. So I'm going to give an example of this with the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma also has a constitutional ethics commission. Theirs is set up slightly different. The way that their constitution is set up, essentially the legislature and the governor have somewhat of a veto. Is that, should I describe it as that? Is that safe? A veto authority over ethics commission rules that they have to go through the legislative process. It's slightly modified, but the ethics commission adopts ethics commission rules. So when I went to my first Kogel meeting, which would have been, when did we go? In 24 or 23? 23. I met the executive director from Oklahoma, and she actually had informed me that she just resigned from her position a few days before the Kogel event. And the reason was because she accomplished the mission that she had. And that was to finally get a comprehensive set of ethics rules for Oklahoma. So I included Oklahoma's rules in the review, the Constitutional Ethics Commission laws. But what Oklahoma did is they looked at the process, they looked at the areas that they had rulemaking authority over, and they took a very comprehensive approach to that. So when this was drafted in 2024, I was likening a process or something that we would do to what Oklahoma did as a wholesale get out and do that type thing. The other three things really echo back to things that are already have been said this morning. Having effective internal processes and procedures, meaning that we can do this, we can do it internally, potentially better. What resources do we need to do to process complaints, to effectively, even if we talk about internal processes and procedures, what is the procedure that we should use for enacting substantive ethics rules? Should it be the commission sitting around like this, just making rules? What other stakeholders potentially should have say? We can work through how that would happen. I have touched base with some community members about their thoughts on that, so I can share that later. And then always going back to the educational resources. I want to give the commission a little bit of an overview on educational resources for all stakeholders. What we see as staff, and I just had it happen this past Friday. A legislator reached out with a question. And this particular legislator was attempting, and he wanted to ensure that he was following the rules and the laws, however we want to say that, but the laws in this state, so that he did everything in accordance. Now, where it got to be difficult is that I cannot and Logan cannot provide legislators legal advice. We are not their attorneys. But really what they were looking for is tell me where I should look, what I should do, because I want to comply. There is this, and we see it consistently, that people want information and they want to know what they should do because they want to do what is in the best interest. They want to do what is right. And so having comprehensive ethical resources or educational materials is really important. States do this in a number of different ways. I look at Texas and Ohio specifically. Ohio has a very comprehensive educational program for all of its stakeholders, everybody in the regulated community as well as the public. Texas also does as well. Now, Texas, I believe, has roughly 30 employees in their ethics commission, so they can do quite a bit more than we can, but they have a lot of resources in that as well. And then the last one is fostering a culture of integrity across state government. Now, this is not regarding substantive ethics rules, but this was lifted from, I brought it. The Campaign Legal Center's Principles for Designing an Independent Ethics Commission, which was given to me on, I have it here, it was given to me on day 2 of being the executive director. And I had never read it before, but I read it, and it really focuses on relationships and how we need to develop a culture of integrity across state government, and how that perhaps has not always been the case in North Dakota. And it really is a cultural type thing. And how can we do that? So I think that's a good jumping off point from 2024, that these were the big things that we knew we had to address to get us moving in the right direction towards a transparent, more transparency, and then to also have accountability. You can see we went on from there and broke it down, but I think with that specifically, the biggest one that takes the most time and resources is the comprehensive enactment and enforcement, and we'll maybe talk about the use of the word enforcement of substantive ethics rules. So I think with that, Jared, I'll probably pull up your sheet that you have. Cindy, was that sufficient?
Very good. Help set the stage.
So Jared sent this a little while ago, and it's noted as Jared's rough thoughts.
So, Madam Chair, I put this together as I was reading through attachment 25. Again, and I was looking at the resources from other states that staff provided and just picking the things that stood out to me that I think we should consider. I actually wrote down, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that advancing the work of the commission is important, and I see this as the heaviest lift one of the heaviest lifts and probably the heaviest lift for us is to create comprehensive ethics rules. And so I think we need to start that conversation now. Just my thoughts. So what I have up there is a bulleted list of, not an exhaustive list either, but of rules that I think we should start building some language around. We scrap this entire list and throw it in the trash. I get it, but I think, my point is, I think we need to start having this conversation.
Bigger, because, can I change the color, Jared, because it's red?
Yeah, that doesn't meet the new.
Does not meet the ADA. There we go.
Also add that some of these, state of North Dakota. So thought is that we need to work with entities. See the. This, I guess, kind of speaks for itself. It genuinely is my rough.
Sorry, in the Secretary of State. In other states, commission. I'm curious if we have an issue with
So when we talk about lobbyist registry, when we talk about lobbyist registration, they do register with the Secretary of State's office. One of the issues that we currently have is that they are not required to provide. That's a really simple potential legislative fix. So when we need to, the issue that we have is, let's say that we have a lobbyist who has a complaint brought against them. We do not have a designated mail that has been provided. So we either need to serve them by certified mail is how we usually do it, or we need to go find an email address and verify it before we inform them of a complaint that's been against them. One of the core administrative problems is not having contact information for individuals who have complaints filed against them. And a lobbyist is one of those examples. So one of the things that Addie, Alicia, the operations administrators have done in the past, and I say Alicia because I'm not sure if you've done it yet, is go and re-update our list, because we do maintain a list of lobbyist email addresses and contact information, but we do that. That is a person resource heavy intensive process. So we're adding an email on a registration, could be something similar. Now, what is not included currently, and I'm going to have to kick it over to Logan so I don't get into providing legal information, but some of the lobbyist registration, it's minimal. We also have what's called lobbyist report, where lobbyists are supposed to report how much they spend on lobbying efforts. We look at those reports currently. Please interrupt me if I say anything legally incorrect. 90% of those, if not 99% of those, say they spend zero money. We know that that is not, in fact, the case. So what is the disconnect and why is that happening? It's because of the definitions, how lobbyist reporting is done. So this is a good example of, there is currently regulation in this area, right? But is it done in a transparent way that can hold individuals accountable? That's a question. So again, a whole area just for lobbyist registration, and other states require, additional information. I don't know if the commission is interested in having lobbyists register with both the Secretary of State and the Ethics Commission. That seems duplicative.
No.
But potentially working in that area to require more or to have different reports to the, there's all sorts of ideas.
You ever contacted the Lobbyists Association to get their list?
Yes.
Okay. Did they share
So,
it with you?
Yep, we get
Their
they
book.
send our book.
Their
They
book,
get, we
yeah.
get the book from them.
And their email's not in the book.
Sometimes their emails are not in the book. Or we have additional or lobbyists who are outside that are not part of the association.
Yeah.
Keep going back to this now.
Sure.
Hey. Top one, clear conflict of interest standards. No participation in matters where there is potential interest. I think we've got several instances where that happens. Public Service Commission is one. With governor and what's the other one?
State Industrial
Industrial
Commission.
The Industrial Commission. I think there's some situations where we have, and we've discussed this way in the past, where they said, well, no, there's only 3 people on the board, and if disqualify them, then we won't have anyone left. Well, that might be, but I think there's still some situations where that can be, those type of things can be addressed. Also, I think there's, and we know because we've dealt with it, there are situations where legislators have been involved in I overuse the word situations where they have an interest and they don't necessarily recuse. So, Jared, that's a very good point. And I'm not going to offer any solutions at this point, but something I think in the future we're going to have. Also, we don't have a cooling off period. Next part.
We do. That's actually in Article 14 of the Constitution.
There, it's okay.
Find it for you so I can give you. It's Article 14, Section 2, Sub 2. It's only applicable to elected public officials, but they cannot be a lobbyist while holding office for 2 years after holding office. So there is the 2-year.
But does not apply to appointed officials, correct?
It does not apply to appointed officials, no. It's also, if you look at the Century Code and the definition of a lobbyist, there's also some issues when it comes to the definition of a lobbyist because it specifically excludes public officials from the definition. How can you violate that and be a quote lobbyist if elected officials are excluded from the definition? So there's probably some work to do definition wise.
Logan, is there? I comments, Pam, and I certainly respect the lobbyist association. Sorry if term, but
Yeah, that's it.
should we add special interest groups? Is that?
They have been used interchangeably when you're talking about lobbying. Now, when you get into election stuff and special interest groups, that can also include political action committees and super PACs. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the topic that you're using it in. That makes sense.
So for registering purposes with the Secretary of State, it's just the individual lobbyist that registers. It isn't stations or
I'll add on the reporting too that Rebecca talked about. We think, we haven't done a lot of research in this area, but those reports that come in, we think the reason that a lot of them say zero is because it's not the lobbyists themselves that's expending the funds. It's the client, the entity that they're lobbying on behalf of that's spending the funds. And if you look at it, there's probably a distinction with how it's worded and how that reporting is done, that you're seeing a bunch of zeros at the end of it.
Madam Chair and members, this is not necessarily a observation or response to the set of thoughts that Commissioner Hubrats used, but it's a idea, concept that may something else. And visit the residents and topic elections or politics comes up, I think that foul taste in one's mouth, figuratively speaking, is, he said, having state influence their views on elections. Now, legislative body with some responsibilities, where legislating begin answer, but it seems to me power or to somehow prevent side from trying to influence elections, but legislature, perhaps there may be that residents, whether they're receiving their information from text message, a poll, a social on YouTube or social media, television, or cash and print media, simply know this message is paid for state organization. It's good or bad, could make that choice, but this is simply to maintain transparency and whether the message is good or bad from out of state, and to consider that sure, or a particular case. So these are just some thoughts. I yield.
One of the things that happened with this mission is there was all kinds of allegations that the election was funded by out-of-state entities. I don't know how true that is. That was one of the accusations as the election was being. Agree with that.
Right, to get us another place and maybe Jared, you use the words comprehensive ethics rules. And then I see these as like pieces of the work. Because I'm like, okay, so clear conflict of interest standards. Yeah. Is that where we start? I mean,
in my mind, the bullets here are a topic that we need
Okay.
to develop a rule.
okay. And then, so for when I see it, I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to go there. But then I'm like, should we even consider going there? Isn't that somebody else's responsibility? And you know, and how do we know not to overstep what we should be doing? And yet, we do have 6 years of information, of thoughts, of work But we're like, yeah, no, we've got stories for these things as to why they're on this list. And how do we bring it forward? You know, and it comes back to, I think I've stated earlier about definitions and words and languages. And does everybody know what a conflict of interest is? And should the commission establish what that is for our own work in that? And then, so how do these other government bodies do it? You know, and to point out like the holes, or, oh, wait a minute, we had this thing kind of happen or whatever in the 6 years or whatever. And so here's where the holes are, the gaps. And why don't you, legislative body, fix this? And here's some ideas of how you can fix it. You know, I'm just not sure. So how do we, where do we go next? Is that the right question?
Well, I would just add, and then maybe a question for staff. I think that is why we need to start this process. And the Secretary of State is a good example. I envision some point in the future, maybe having a discussion with them and saying, we have these concerns. We would like there to be a rule surrounding this topic. How do you feel about that? And that's why I think this is going to be a heavy lift. And this is a very initial, off the cuff, in some respects, list, and maybe we provide this as a starting point for staff or ourselves as commissioners to add additional topics or language or whatever we think needs to happen. But I think we need to start somewhere.
Well, no, and as our newest member, oh my gosh, he really did jump right in because you've captured a lot of that 6 years of work and very succinctly. You know, it's just, it's like, oh my gosh, how did he get to that?
You're not giving us much credit, Sid.
Well, no, because no, he's read because we've done the work. We've been there. You know, yeah. But I'm still a little, not torn, but for me, I'm still thinking do we need to say, what are comprehensive ethics rules?
Can I
For-
make
for-
a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we talk about comprehensive ethics rules, I think Pam, Mark, and Jared, you've all identified, and Ron, you've all identified areas, right, that are concerning to you or you think that are concerning to the public. So as we talk about comprehensive rules, I think establishing a process for how we go about enacting those is step one. And then we follow the process and we walk through that in an organized, collaborative approach because there are legal issues. We've identified a few already, right? Where does the commission, what point does the commission's authority stop and the legislative assembly's authority start, right? Where did those maybe overlap, et cetera? So I think approaching it from a process standpoint and getting feedback, because Jared started out his conversation by noting that he is a public citizen, that he's a North Dakotan, and this is what he's seen. And the commission works for North Dakotans. So I think that would be a good place to start. Now, I think we could structure it in a way that could potentially benefit. And I'll hand it over to Logan.
I was just going to offer a suggestion from a legal organization standpoint. If we look at the Constitution, when we're talking about rules, you have 4 subject areas. So you can start there: transparency, corruption, elections, and lobbying. Those are your 4 subject areas. So you can fit these subjects that you have on this list within one of those topics, and some of them may overlap. But then once you break it into those 4 subjects, you have 3 groups of individuals who you have authority over: lobbyists, public officials, and candidates for office. So if you have those as the 3 criteria under each topic, you can say, well, which rules should apply to these people, each category. And then from there, you can look at what other laws exist in the category and what agency you need to talk to. Maybe it is the legislature that you're talking to for a specific instance under that heading. I'm using the lobbying one, for example. It's the Legislative Assembly, the Secretary of State. You're talking to them and saying, well, here's the laws that currently exist. Here's what the commission is looking at in this category. So you can keep it organized, and then we can tie it back to the Constitution as well.
Rebecca, to your point about how do we do this and what's our process? It's like, wait a minute. Don't we kind of have a process? Haven't we been doing a, but then I'm like, yeah, but have we articulated it?
So, Cindy, we do have a process for rulemaking, the formal rulemaking, right? Where I think the commission could benefit, particularly involving the public, the people who the commission works for, is in the development of recommendations or drafts related to substantive rules, or at least getting feedback. And I think that was part of the public priority survey, is getting feedback from the public about what is important to them. The same way that Jared just articulated what was important to him. And so I think that is the starting point. And then once we're in the quote rulemaking process, we do have the formal rulemaking process, but we want to make sure, the commission should make sure that stakeholders and individuals feel heard in the early development of rules.
So prior to a hearing,
Yes, that would be,
while it's being hashed or thought of, and
you could even involve the legislature, the legislature, the other elected officials to have input early on, but develop a process that you can walk through, that is fair, allows appropriate hearing, gets feedback, has feedback loops, in order to develop those comprehensive ethics rules.
so then my mind goes to, oh my gosh, we don't have enough staff. Because it's going to take time, and you got to have somebody just to do it. Just, okay, let alone then after that, the next steps are layers, right?
Between Rebecca and I, we've identified like going out to other states and seeing what they do as good research projects for our interns this summer. So keep that in mind too as you're discussing it, that it might not be the 3 of us directly working on it, but maybe an intern who has a good project for the summer that we can review and then bring to the commission and have some input and buy-in from them working for us as well.
And in fact, then could we as commissioners play a role in that? Or is that too close? Is that, because we're going to be the ones, because I know Commissioner Western has always talked in your brief tenure with us about that public engagement, that discourse. And well, we've got good lawyers. You could tell us when the fine line, right? But there's an aspect of that where, yes, we as commissioners could be maybe helpful or engaged in that.
Yes, and just because you generate an idea, it might not be legally sound. It's still a discussion topic that we can have further discussion on.
Yeah, I agree, and I trust that Logan will tell us if and before we cross a line so that it's all appropriate. And with the public priorities survey, if we create a list of topics or rules we might propose, and as we get the analysis of the public priorities, we might be able to say, this rule is supported by the feedback we received, or the feedback might um, create, cause us to create different rules.
Yeah.
So I also have the concern about time and staff, but I don't, I think we all understand that the staff has to prioritize things. I don't think we should stop this process because of that concern. Maybe this gets put on the back burner at some point because we're just too busy with other things, but I maintain that we need to make progress.
Yeah, no, right. But okay, just another thought that popped in my head. It- Could it even be part of that thing we're considering now, that policy about the public comment on the agenda? Or is that, no, that's getting,
Hold on,
just a thought.
There's a piece of it where, yes, you could do something similar specific to rules where you're trying to get public input in the same type of way. Or you could ask for volunteers to help the commission get direction, what have you. It's really up to your creative control on how you want to approach it.
so I'm going to share if the commission doesn't mind, I will share something that was shared with me as a result of the public priority survey. I had a conversation with a member of the public, and it gets to Mark's point about getting the commission out there and interacting with the public as well. So it really serves two purposes, and that is holding town halls with the commission, for the commission to listen, not the commission staff, but the commission to listen to what the public is saying. And so we did the public priority survey, we got individuals engaged, but having a town hall format where they can have discussions with the commission, and it's not specific to anything maybe on a meeting or an agenda, like it would be in the public comment period, but them sharing what is their concerns in their area or in what they're seeing, and then the commission bringing that back. And it involves the public. It opens up a communication channel. It will allow people to feel like they are involved in the process. And then it could create the foundations for what are in the comprehensive ethics rules in those 4 areas. Now, I will not claim that that was my idea, but that it was something that was presented to me, but I was nodding my head. And so I'm sharing it with the commission.
Madam Chair and members, I think that that is appropriate and a wonderful stepping stone to the idea that Bob Michael, who was the House Minority Leader in the United States Congress for about 20 years, had said once that the key to leadership is listening. And sometimes it is especially important in any public role, public service, to actually have town hall or other meetings where it's the public that talks rather than the policymaker. And I would suggest that perhaps an aspirational goal is during a biennium that a commissioner could it, and I do think commissioner rather than staff, and how that changes our roles. There be every county in the state being visited somehow. That's a whole lot of aspiration and a whole lot of time, but you know, I can see, notwithstanding larger counties, on X day with notice printed in the local newspaper, somebody's going to be at the library or at the whatever coffee place to simply listen to any concerns, to take them back, because that also is a way of gathering data and promoting transparency and encouraging civic and public participation. I yield.
I was trying to do the math. 5 commissioners, what is it, 53 counties? It's like, oh my gosh, but that would be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, yeah, but just, so my mind went to the the facility, really,
Understood.
how would we do this?
Well,
And
if
then
we're gonna
there's a
dream-
cost attached to that too, which right now I know we can't afford, but oh yeah, I really like that.
If we're gonna dream, dream big.
Yes, yes.
And in the same respect, just to think through another issue as it relates to the promulgation of rules, perhaps, and I know there's all the regular notice requirements that exist, when a commission is thinking about a particular issue that relates to the four core rulemaking places, simply putting the relevant House and Senate committee members on notice that we're going to look at this and we will look at this in the next 3 months. If you want to have communications, either formal, informal, or otherwise, it's open, listening. Let's work together. That's the name of the game. I yield. And I actually, it would be the state and local government committee in the Senate, and then I think the government affairs committee in the House, if I've got my fingers on it policy wise, but that's probably most of the time, but not all the time. I yield.
That would be correct. Typically, what we do when we begin rulemaking is we will send out a notice, so they're aware. We're also in communications with those individuals in those particular subcommittees or subcommittees frequently. So we do try to keep them apprised. We also try to keep the majority leaders and the minority leaders apprised of what we're doing. So that's something that I think we could do better and do more of. It comes down to a resources thing, but for the purposes of this discussion, resources should not be a limiting factor. And I'm then also going to make a plug that we don't have a lot of resources, but we can ask for more resources in order to do the duties that are given to the commission in the Constitution. And again, that's something that will then become a legislative priority based on how the commission decides here.
Yes, I'll acknowledge, I actually said that, didn't I? When we're planning, thinking big dreams, it's like, don't limit those thoughts, those ideas relative to resources. Oh, yeah, check. Yeah. And the other aspect of it on this town hall idea and stuff, it's like, oh my, because my mind keeps twirling about it, but oh, hey, we can involve the legislators from those communities. We could let the Secretary of State and the AG's office, hey, we're gonna do this. Open public forum. You want to come and help and be with us? We'd love that.
So just to follow up on Mark's comment about every county, I think that would be fantastic. We could set a coffee hour type thing even. Don't even have to call it a town hall, right? Every small town in North Dakota has a cafe. And, I think that would be very good for the public to see who is serving them. In the interim, if we can't quite get to every county, because there is a lot of them, perhaps we should start in the communities that you are all in or in the large cities. And if we want to do that, one of the ways that we could use resources without having us to expend a lot of resources is use the civic groups that are in those locations to promote or to help us at least organize such an event. So, I mean, I know the Lions would love to do that. So,
I like that suggestion, Rebecca, those local civic organizations that are out there. I also like the suggestion about libraries, the few that are out there still in that, yeah. That's a good big dream. How are we doing? I'm going to suggest we take a lunch break. Almost
Are
11:40.
we gonna get a picture? Who is gonna take the picture? Huh? Would you take my picture? It's not gonna be a group picture?
I thought we were going to have a group.
Email said,
Pam said,
yes. Supposed to plan accordingly.
remember that. I didn't.
That's
Pam
why
says
we've,
she wants to
that's
be
why
in the
we've been
back
dressed up
row.
so nice every day.
I'm short, I'm always in the front.
I,
Short people are always.
I know
Oh,
they.
Why don't we
but I
take care of
thought that's not fair.
photos, take a lunch break,
So-
reconvene at 12:30. And as your chair, I'm going to suggest we try to be wrapped up by 2 PM. Yeah. All right. So we will recess for a lunch break. It's approximately 11:43 PM here on Thursday. And so the North Dakota Ethics Commission will be in recess until 12:30. Good afternoon. We will reconvene the North Dakota Ethics Commission. And noting that Commissioner Goodman has been excused for the afternoon. Having good discussion about plans, future of the North Dakota Ethics Commission. Rebecca, think you have enough to get us going, or do we need to maybe, at the right word? Or do we have enough to take us through March? Digest, or?
Chair. I think we're close, but, I think should needs to do. Should have a goal, some sort.
Madam Chair and members, this is responsive to what Commissioner Hubrights is saying. It asks the question, what came first, the cart? And is there a higher need to communicate and actual rules within the of rule is rule rather suspect education comes first, but so speak for myself in saying that.
I would submit that the communication should be initial development. Should preclude us from draft. Putting our idea. Which of the forecast. The initial process should be taking that back in conjunction with the maybe even reaching out to conversations with my understanding the legislature different stations and or experts on a certain considers something like that or individual.
Do we have, I'm just too muddled or muddy from this morning's discussion, but don't we have some, maybe it's already in, haven't we already identified some steps? This process Logan articulated about with subject area, other groups. A lot, and again, coming back to length of time, the existence of the commission and lessons learned, or what have we seen, what have we heard last 6 years? Comprehensive ethics rule. Should it be? Should we just throw stuff out there? Should-
Sorry, but then to also prioritize which area of rules we should start with. Whatever, but I don't know which one it is, but you take the first one, whether because it's easy or because it's important, I don't know what, but prioritize our order. The process can't be too much different than what we've gone through. I mean, don't we have to start out with and
Yes and no. We've approached it a little different each time. It's recent. A lot of that was legislation, so we kind of have final version before we go into the rule process needs. If you take the travel rules, tried to get them in a very workable format before we spent the $2,000 to start the notice process and go through the process. We got a bit of feedback before we started formally making, unquote, that process. So here you could probably follow a similar model and say, we're going to develop this rule. It's not a formal proposed rule yet. It's still an idea, but we do have a draft that we're working on. Want to put it somewhat final format before we process and expend the funds. Make sure the public is aware, like, yes, this is the policy we're looking at. And the tweaks, we'll make more tweaks to it rather than substantive overhauls of it at the end based on the comments that we receive once we're in the process. So before you begin the formal rulemaking process, you can get creative with how you solicit the feedback, how you draft it, and then we'll make sure once we go into the process that we're following what the statute requires to actually adopt the rule, publish it in the admin code.
what we'll have to figure out at the get-go is, I mean, great list of, look at one of those, how broad we ever. Yeah, I mean, you could just be all crazy, or imagine some town hall meetings, or one of those meetings.
What's, what I'm grappling with is free thingy, right? That, you can call it that. We know what the rulemaking process is, because that's articulated, right? We've done it. This other thing that we're struggling, but yeah, struggling with relative to, when I come back to what I asked about earlier about defining our work, those pieces, including, I think the commission needs to have its definitions. What are ethics? Just broad framework. What's conflict of interest? And I know those are defined every place else, including in law. Yeah, but I think our work, our baseline, our foundation of our work, we need to have agreement about what that is.
Are you suggesting that we have sort of a rule including the definitions that we talk about? Conflict of, I don't know where conflict is defined, but.
Well, and I was like, no, I don't think we wanted a rule. rule.
No, no, not a rule.
And I'm thinking, what I think I'm talking about is something more philosophical. It's,
So- Chair Lindquist, I think I can articulate, because you and I have had this conversation before. I think for the purposes of when we have conversations and when we have conversations about what should conflict of interest rules be, I think creating a fundamental baseline understanding. I think that's what you're getting at, is having, so before we go into rulemaking, before we go into having discussions, having a working definition of certain words that we all have this, attribute the same meaning to. So not necessarily in a rule, but more like a understanding, like a memorandum of understanding that this is what these things mean to the commission. Based on our previous conversations, I think that's what we're getting at.
well, the other aspect of that, for me, I know there's other definitions. And other, like, conflict of interest. Here, legislative body with Secretary of State, whatever, Supreme Court. But not just the definitions, but the application of what that is. And how do they do that? Because from my perspective, and based on our complaints over the years, there's some holes. And I don't know that it's our job to help Supreme Court, legislature, AG, secretary, to fix those holes, but because we tried in our annual report, at the end of our annual report, what did we call them? Suggestions? Did we say recommendations?
Recommendations, I think.
We tried to point some of those things out and again, in a good way in that, but since we put that report out, I have not had anybody approach me about our annual report and, oh, those things at the end, those recommendations. So, yeah. But yes, Rebecca articulated much better about, yeah.
That
And-
does
and-
make a
and-
lot of sense to
and
have
I-
a working understanding of all the terms we're going to be referring to. Yeah.
Because then it gets complicated, yeah, but it can be convoluted also because, oh, wait, somebody here, this thing, this situation, they saw it this way, they interpreted it that way. We're like, whoa, wait a minute, that's, yeah. So then how can we do comprehensive ethics rules if we don't set that stage, we don't set that baseline foundation?
Logan used the word creative, and I'm supportive of a process where we engage the public in some way early on. And given that feedback, then we move to our chairs here and try to start putting something down on paper, to include a common understanding based on what the Ethics Commission has learned over the last 6 years of the terms you're suggesting, Madam Chair. But for purposes of staff for the next meeting, can we have, what do we need to do to schedule something or to begin the process of scheduling something, town hall, what have you? Can we direct you to look into that, what it might cost, and perhaps as part of our drafting the rules, what type of experts might we tap into to assist in that process, if we want to do that? I'm not saying we have to bring in experts.
Well, I agree, but I say, no, we're not gonna put more work on our staff. And I think this is such a good discussion because I think that survey that we just are finishing is going to be so informative to begin that. And maybe that's the beginning of not just a strategic plan, but of strategy in and of itself about who we are, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to get to in that. And so we take the time to really, each of us individually, since Rebecca has given us the data now from the survey, and then while we're having it professionally analyzed in that there, but we've got a lot of material from today's discussion and from our work. So maybe that's the starting point. So if we could, it's February, March, April, May. Like, for the next 3 months, can we kind of flesh this out a little bit and start, well, all of us putting in what we see as, let's 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And more important, and keeping in mind again, January 27, what do we really need to get ready and within what we have and where we're at? And including the work, because there's so much work they're doing and having to do. And
So it sounds like you are suggesting some homework, and I'm okay with homework in addition to the mission and vision statement. I don't have a problem with that. I agree. I think we need to strengthen the list I created or recreate, whatever we need to do to give ourselves a starting point. I would be willing to reach out to the 4 or 5 largest cities in North Dakota, see what venues there are, what the cost might be for an afternoon meeting, something. I would be willing to do that and put together some budget numbers. I would rely on staff to tell me what it costs us to travel, and pay us and all that good stuff. But I can do some of that legwork too. Because I'm with you, Madam Chair. As much as I can, I'll take work off their plates.
please.
Comment on that. So thank you, Commissioner Hubrates, for offering to do that. I think it would be, I think it'd be good for us to have somebody to help or assist with that, right? Once we get down to the scheduling of things, that Addie can really hone in on getting the scheduling. One of my bigger concerns comes down to not actually getting something on the books or the location, but appropriately messaging and getting the information out there. And so to that end, we have used, we have some tools in our toolbox already that we can do that with, right? We do have social media. Our social media has a very, very small reach. But we can use our best communication method is sending out the Gov delivery emails that goes out. How many people does that reach? Yeah, I think it's around there, close to 900. So, but I think engaging those civic leaders locally and figuring out who that is. So if we want to work with civic organizations, that's where potentially then you could be reaching out to them but we could coordinate that and
Okay,
just
okay.
take some stuff
I want to
off.
back up because, excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But no, I'm saying, let's us do our work for the next like 2 months before we do that piece.
Okay.
I don't think, I don't think we're well enough organized. Yeah, and to me, it's just till, so we can come to consensus about our plan, our mission, our vision. And it can still, we can finalize pieces of it, but other pieces, hey, we really want engagement on this. We want you to help guide us, direct us as we do. We're thinking through this, we think this number one, whatever, and that. Yeah, but I think first we need to get ourselves better situated. Yeah. And got it started, and we've actually, I think, made much more progress than I thought we would do. So yay.
So step one is, I guess I'm asking, is to put this in the shared folder so that we can access it and add, subtract, whatever we wanted.
And I'm always in planning processes, I'm always like, part of why when Rebecca did the timeline and that and provided you all the previous plans and that, it's ongoing. And we change, we modify it. So to emphasize that also, here's where we are now in this situation, 2026. I think that the current plan is through 27. If I
Yes.
remember, okay, yeah, so it's timely. We've got a year, but so not to forget those, what's in those, and where are they at now? Are they still applicable? Where, yeah.
Can I ask a workload question? So I'm seeing walking away from today and really having the commissioners, I'll upload this document. My brain automatically goes to a flow chart of how this happens. And I don't know if anybody else's brain goes there, but that's something that we could put up there, into the shared folder that people could then add to or create suggestions that it's a modifiable document. And articulate where we are. And potentially, I'm envisioning this now in my head where we have, in our current strategic plan, we have four big goals. And we've been talking mostly about one of them, which is the comprehensive enactment and enforcement of substantive ethics rules. So have that as one portion. But then we have these other ones, the application of effective internal processes, comprehensive education, which got deprioritized, and then fostering a culture of integrity. Those actually all overlap. And if we could demonstrate, I guess, in a flow chart or kind of a tactical plan, to borrow language that I'm guessing Jared is familiar with, that we work through that, or at least outline something, and that then the commission can put that in. That's what I'm envisioning. However, if I'm saying something that is above and beyond or inaccurate, let me know. Is that what you're? Okay.
I think we're all fairly tech intelligent and can use those tools, yeah. Because it's work in progress. We're still, yeah. And so if we can do some of that via online, see where we can get it to for the next meeting.
I think we've stated this sufficiently, but we're working toward some kind of a public forum to gather public input.
Yeah. And maybe several public forums, but maybe we start with a big one.
And then we go to every county, right? Yeah.
It's
I think he volunteered.
a lot of fun. Because I've done it on the health side, and what I remember, not just meeting the people who are so wonderful, but the food they serve you. It's like, oh my gosh, this is in North Dakota?
Every nation. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have enough, Rebecca? To put into a, well, yeah, you do, because look at it's up there.
Commissioners, I think so. I think it's gonna be pretty rough, but I think
Yeah.
you'll be able to fill in. From this discussion, I want to give you guys just a little bit of more information regarding when we approach legislative session. So specific to legislative session, I know I have a note down here. Cindy, you had timeline. This is a work in progress. It's going to take some time. But as we think about the goals, the aspirational goals that the commission has, I want to just remind everybody of timelines. So typically, our budget request, what we will be requesting from the legislature specific to funds and resources, is typically done in June and July, right, Pam? Okay, all right, so that is quickly approaching. And we've had discussions about, aspirational goals. And I think once we distill them down a little bit, we'll be able to pull what resources we need from this. And I guess I'd like to hear from the commission kind of what resources are you currently thinking that we may need? Obviously not locking anybody into anything to facilitate the aspirational goals that we discussed early. So going back to aspirational goals, I don't know if I wrote those down or not. I did not, but I can put them on here actually because I have notes.
And I'm just off the cuff. I haven't written, I mean, I think at a minimum, we need one person dedicated only to education. I think we need another attorney because Logan needs some help. And I don't know if Addie needs some more help, but, and I'm gonna say Rebecca could use some more help too. So there's really probably do need a third person that is an investigator / legal person. I mean, at a minimum, I would think that we would need, but I'm interested to hear what everyone else says.
Madam Chair and members, one of the things I think about is then with additional staff would require the need for additional space and working through that infrastructure issue.
I'll comment on the space, Commissioner Western, just to let everybody know. So the OMB is doing a space analysis currently. We were the first agency to submit our information regarding the space analysis because we have it all at our fingertips. It's very small. We were able to submit it. We also make the best use of our space because we have very little square footage and we have, limited staff. We have figured out a way. I've worked with facilities that we can add an additional potentially 2 people to restructure what Logan and I have as kind of our bullpen area. But once we get beyond that, we are very tight. Now, we will be beyond that very quickly with the introduction of interns. Just the additional 3 interns that we will be having this summer will add substantially to our staff. So I've already given our facilities folks a heads up that we may need to look for, some more space within the Capitol. They are keeping that in mind. And if we want to give them further direction about approximately how many, they have the space analysis open through, I'd have to check on what Brandon said, maybe another week or 2 or a few more weeks. So we can give that. And after I had discussions with Commissioner Hubrights very early on, he made a similar comment. So I kind of gave Brandon a heads up on that we might need additional space. So if we want them to consider that to find space for us, that could be potentially a little bit larger. That's something that they could potentially do. There's also the question of cost that comes with that. So there's currently a pool of money. If I understand this correctly, and I will verify this before the next meeting, that OMB got during the last legislative session to reprioritize space that's in OMB's budget. So potentially we could tap into those funds for that. If not, then we would have to make that ask during legislative session, which we did that during 2023 and they did approve that in order for us to have more space because we use our space very well, given the amount of space that we have. So a little information on that. The idea would be to keep us in the judicial wing, potentially even on the same floor, potentially just creating more office space or switching out with a part of DHHS or DHS or something similar.
I don't know which one it was, but one of you, new commissioners, mentioned when you learned to discovered our office space, and one of you pointed out, our exec director doesn't have a private office. Okay, and I'm like, yeah, what the hell? How did, and I'm so glad it got pointed out because, yeah, and maybe at that juncture where we were fine with how we set it up. But then when it was pointed out, I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is a good situation anymore. And based on those complaints, our work, and then I'm like, our exec director should have, and actually I think our attorney should have a private office. Yeah, but in the context of plans, I'm going to reiterate, we got to fight for we got to get 3 FTEs. Education, IT, and then that support staff between, and there's an aspect of it, I was like, yeah, I think it's gonna have to be a lawyer. Yeah. And I mean that in a good way. Not,
Cindy, if I can add on that as the attorney for the commission, we've had discussions that even having a paralegal on board would be extremely helpful to facilitate some of the drafting that gets put on the back burner because my attention's needed elsewhere.
yeah. And then, so then thinking about that, but even our interns and this fellow clerk person or position, I'm like, I don't know how, should that work be done in a public way like that? Or should there be more containment where there's some privacy and protection? I mean, yes, it's you're all the staff, but and that I don't know, but for sure, at least 3 FTEs, and then how do we accommodate that? And it's probably time to look at, we need different space or new space or to fix the space.
So I have a lot of thoughts on offices and space, partly because I just default to taking care of people. So for example, I don't have my own office, but I was offered one. I don't want my own office. We adopted open concept where I work. But I think Rebecca and Logan should have that opportunity at some point to have their own space if they want it. The other thing is, with the addition of interns or full-time staff in the current space, I know you've said they're going to utilize the conference room area, right? Is there an option for temporary cubes in there? Does the Capitol have that equipment where you could set up a cube at least?
To answer your question, so if we were to go with kind of a temporary structure, we'd have to pay for that. That would come in what they call those do it right now walls. I can't remember what they're exactly called, but I think they call them dirt walls. So, which sounds strange, I know, but that's the acronym that I've learned. So that would be something that the commission would have to pay for. I think we're making I think utilizing the conference room in that way is okay for now, right? Logan and I still have the ability within our space to meet. We have that additional table there in the center that we can meet with people. And then what we do is for commission meetings, we clear off the interns' things, set it aside. That's what we did during legislative session. Or when we have meetings in there, they clear off their things. So does it work? Yes. Does it work great? No. Yep.
From supervising interns before, legal interns specifically before, it usually works actually well to have them in a collaborative environment like that. I've seen that in the past when I've supervised those interns at the federal court. So I think it's maybe a benefit to have them both in that room. where they can work collaboratively. But situations change and people are different too, so just a thought.
Well, the other thing, I guess, is, yeah, I would defer to our staff to tell us. I don't think it's working, and I think maybe you need some privacy, but I don't know. You tell us as the commission, um, how is it working? And when we get the 3 FTEs in 2027, isn't that a nice,
So-
and again, that's 2027, so they get the FTEs, and then we say, well, we need different office space to accommodate that.
So to answer your question, I think the current system that we operate under, I will speak for myself, I won't speak for Addie or Logan. I think it does work fairly well. Where we run into issues is, for instance, if I'm working on something that I can't be bothered, right? Where I need to kind of zone out. Both Logan and I utilize earbuds quite a bit. I mean, I do more than you do. But I'm also more easily distracted. So what we do though is we work from home on those days. So we do utilize that work from home. We each have an office, dedicated office at our homes that we are working out of. So for instance, if I'm working on something that I can't be bothered with, I do that. Logan does the same thing. And then Addie does as well, specifically when she's working on minutes, doing those kind of longer projects. That's what we do. But during legislative session, that's not really an option because we're all hands on deck. We don't work from home nearly as much during legislative session. On average now, we work at home 2 days a week, depending on plus or minus, but roughly 2 days a week. And then we're in the office. It's one of the reasons that we can make the small space work is that there are times that there's only 2 of us there or potentially 1 of us there on some days. So it does work. I have no huge giant interest, I guess, in having my own office. Maybe Logan has a different thought. That's not something I've grown up in the open concept culture, and I think it promotes collaboration. And I mean, it does offer also some distractions, hence the earbuds. But I think just space wise, like we have a tiny microwave, a small fridge, and there are just some accommodation type things that having a little bit more space would be nice.
As excited as we were when we found that space,
I
and then part of the
Still a great
judicial
space.
wing, we kind of like that connotation, but it's like, I'm sorry, it's a little too hidden. It's too out of the way. So that public consideration, they want to know where we're at and how to find us. You can't find us easily. And I know there's signage and stuff, but it's still kind of tucked away in the corner, like, and so as we have this discussion, that's another consideration not to forget. Okay, so where are we?
Rebecca had just asked for what we think our need for resources. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, well, and planning is always tied to budgeting and then staffing. So I mean, we know that. So if we can at least come up with an outline of our plan, the big picture kind of thing, even though there's detail there in the next couple of months as a commission, and then start really honing in on specifics and details. Because yeah, Rebecca's point about and I'm sure Governor Armstrong's going to probably follow the same process about he calls for each entity to submit your budget and all this and that and whatever, and yeah. So timing is going to be really important.
Madam Chair, I do have something to add. I will commit to finishing my compilation of staffing and budgeting information for ethics commissions and share that with Commissioner Sharp in the next 2 weeks, and potentially sharing a rough draft of that with you for your consideration to put on the next agenda. Again, budget, staff, and maybe a little bit of this is how other commissions are organized staff-wise.
Well, and along with that, Rebecca, did we find somebody to do that analysis?
Ah, Chairwoman Lindquist, for the workforce analysis. So I have had communications with a few individuals about what that should look like, about creating a workforce analysis based on taking the duties and responsibilities that fall to the commission and then doing an analysis of what are the resources that this should take, given the duties that fall to the commission? So in those preliminary discussions about what this should look like, we likely will be going through a bidding process, putting out an RFP for this based on kind of cost estimates that I don't have yet. So I'm keeping that in mind as well. On that front, as I was having those, really the question that kept coming up is what is the long-term goals for the commission? And in order to evaluate how to meet those long-term goals. So it was really one of those things that they wanted to hear from what the long-term goals would be before they could create an RFP for that. So it does seem a little bit like it's work that Jared is potentially doing. I think the idea with the workforce analysis, when we talked about it initially, was having an independent third party do that evaluation. I don't know. I have talked with HRMS about whether they do that, and the answer was no. Whether other agencies have done that, and the answer was no. But it really comes down to the fact that the Ethics Commission is in a unique position, that we're not part of, the traditional three branches of government. So having kind of an independent analysis may be beneficial. I think it would be good for the commission to revisit that, possibly at the March meeting, given the work that we've done here today.
That discussion and that directive to our staff came from the last legislative session when they turned us down for the position. And then we directed our staff to the best of their ability to really document their workload. In addition to trying to find, and I thought somebody within state had that expertise, because when legislature creates something or gives an entity more FTE or whatever, how do they know? How do they know how many? There has to be some analysis or something done. I don't know if legislative council does that, but I just assumed HR had people who kind of knew how to do that analysis and stuff. And so and then we found out, no, HR doesn't. And so then we were like, okay, we know that there's got to be some outside bodies or entities that do that type of analysis for workforce staffing.
I think that work is still necessary. It will definitely be better than what I do. I'm providing some data points for us to compare ourselves to. I am not analyzing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, it'll complement.
So Commissioner Hubrights, I think that work though would be a component of what they do. So having that information would be important for whoever does that analysis to have. So I think you're doing some of the legwork that they may have otherwise done that will maybe make it a little less expensive or more cost effective for them to do it. So I see that as a good step in the right direction.
Okay, we have homework. And Rebecca, are you okay with where we're at for planning?
Yes.
All right, I want to take a 5-minute break. It's got a couple more things on our agenda. So it is 2:21. Oh.
We're ahead of
Yeah.
schedule. Yeah.
1:21. We'll come back by 1:30. We are in recess. Right, we are back in session at 1:30 for the North Dakota Ethics Commission. Continuing on agenda, we have strategic plan. Commissioners for the good work and staff. More to come. There is a unfinished one or follow-up from yesterday's discussion, and we did not take action on regarding human resources update, ID. and regarding with the county clerkship, postgraduate legal research fellow for consideration.
Madam Chair and members, the question I've got is maybe title more than. I hear the words fellowship. I concepts of did work as well. Based on the conversations from yesterday's regularly scheduled meeting, understanding that this would be just akin to ship. General counsel's supervision as much as anything. If that's the case, maybe ship as opposed to a fellowship just through. Then my analysis is off. I yield.
Questions or comments? You'd like us to take a motion on this? Because I think timing is another point issue on this, right?
Yes, commissioners, let me give you, so timing was a point. I also wanted the commission to be aware of just the cost and the other discussion points that we had throughout yesterday's meeting regarding other costs or expenditures of the commission. So specifically to speak to Commissioner Western's point about what we call it, I think I'm open to, if we want to call it a clerkship, if we want to ship. That was a brainstorming session with HR. That's it. So I think we can modify the title still. The idea, though, I think concept, we can vote on, if the commission wants to vote on the concept, we can discuss the name additionally and what would maybe be the most appealing to law students of what they want. Maybe a clerkship would be that for a fellow. I mean, I'm open to anything that will get the most applicants.
I think a clerkship is more descriptive of what I understand it to be rather than a fellowship. But I don't know ship, so.
That's why we use the title to make it catchier. So, but I will defer to the commission on that.
Is there an expectation that the applicant be licensed or have applied for licensure?
That will be included on one of the requirements. Mhm.
I personally gravitate towards clerkship only because I think in a sense, in a school sense, that it's a job. Deal.
Are we ready to do a motion?
And I think it was, this position was part of a larger conversation. Just want, correct me if I'm wrong, but we went through this position, discussed 2 legal interns this summer, a possible business communication intern. That's possibly 4 people, 3 of them being interns. We also talked about the case management system and the website updates. Is that part of this budget conversation that you to return to, or am I bringing in too much?
Commissioner Hubrights, you're not bringing in too much. So the funds for the case management system, those are already designated. We already have those set aside. So that's good. But it's good to keep in mind overall, when we have the 3 intern positions, the 2 legal interns and the business intern, that has already been calculated into the budget. So that's already included. 2 of the legal interns have already been hired. The business intern, I believe, is a operational necessity given the leave that Addie will be taking. One of the positions that we haven't discussed yet is the legislative intern. So we currently have, according to Addie's estimate, approximately $18,000, specifically 17,900 set aside for a legislative intern. And the question that I posed to General Counsel Carpenter today is that, and so keep in mind, we are currently, we go down, Addie, can you go down to how much we have left at the end of the biennium? We are negative a little shy of $22,000. So if we were to move away from the part-time temporary attorney position and move to this postgraduate clerkship, that would save the commission approximately $31,000. So that gives us a positive 10,000. The other thing that we could do potentially is not host a legislative intern. And yes, that would get us one more person to be doing additional work for us during that time. But not having a legislative intern then we could supplement that by having that clerkship position or that person in that clerkship. So the question I posed to General Counsel Carpenter is, if you had to pick between the two, what would you pick? And the recommendation was, or the request was, going with the legal intern. You have somebody who's through college or through law school. Excuse me, the clerkship, not the intern. I misspoke. I apologize. The clerkship. You have somebody who's all the way through law school, has taken civil procedure, criminal procedure, has done all of that coursework. And so that would maybe be the preference. So that would give us another additional 18,000 to the positive. So we'd, swing quite a ways from where we currently are. And that could potentially open up funds for the workforce analysis and other things that we discussed yesterday during the meeting. It gives us a little bit of wiggle room, is what I'm saying. We also won't have to make a decision on a legislative intern until, when does the law school do that? I feel like we do it is it already in the spring? It's later spring though, right? So we'll have a few months to make that decision on a legislative intern. But this one, timing wise, the recommendation from the law school was to get this posted sooner rather than later.
And just from my perspective, it's like, so we had concurred or agreed to that temporary attorney hiring. It's not working out. And so when Rebecca told me about this fellowship clerkship thing, oh, that's pretty creative. And besides that, it maybe can save us some money to get our books balanced. But I mean, it remains to be seen, but that's the estimate or the projection in that. So it helps solve a couple of things for us, including getting some legal help.
Well, I would be willing to move that we authorize the executive director to develop a job description, solicit applications, and hire a postgraduate legal research clerk starting August 1st, 2026 through July 31st, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Addie, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hubrights,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, Commissioner Westron,
Aye.
and Chair Lindquist.
Aye. Hey, thank you. All right, any other further business?
Nothing from the staff, Chairwoman.
Okay, so I did add on, if you want to dig out your calendars, the possibility, could we change our dates? Meeting dates for March, April, May? And did we have a May date?
March
March 25th, April 29, May
20th.
20th. Generally, But yeah. That was just kind of historical. We just kind of set them Wednesdays and it kind of worked out for us, but don't necessarily have to be Wednesday.
Chair, I guess my first question would be, I say that because I know I was the preceding week traveling to
Try to respectful of our staff and the closeness between our meetings. So if we would have backed it up maybe a week, but no, but push it out. And then what happens then is it falls into the next month. Does that not count for both March and April? It's a scheduling conflict for me. I could do Friday, March 27th. I don't know that we like Friday,
I don't,
but
two, so I have to consult. Personally do March 27th, I trial conflicts in a matter. Sure, I
okay, Friday, March 27th. Thank you. April. Right now it's the 29th. Backing it up week would the April, that might be too soon. Which one? And if we go on May, Friday,
personally am. Yes, let's step back. 24th was supposed to be Fargo question mark.
that's right.
That works, and the 7th is Teams. The March meeting is on Teams.
Yep. So
That's
if we schedule it for Friday, the 20th, I know you're still working.
So we plan on working with NDSU to accommodate a meeting. Friday, I have a feeling it might be not a great day on campus. But if that's the only day that works, then that's the only day that works. But perhaps looking at the 23rd, I'm not sure what your travel like, Cindy. The 23rd would. We could also do something in the afternoon versus the morning. Done that before we start the meeting at 1 and go till 5 to accommodate traveling in the morning, so you're not something.
Traveling on the. Also throw out whether or not, but another possibility, cite us for county courts, which honestly don't know. Makes sense in that respect.
Added benefit.
Stick with Friday.
Personally prefer, it's me speaking on my May is supposed to be a Teams meeting, question mark?
Stick my head out. For me, for myself, May's okay.
To leave May?
Leave May. On the 20th. You. All right, any other business?
Just a logistical question for that April meeting then, if we're meeting on Friday morning. Or Friday, we'll want to do that in the morning, Zoom, not in the afternoon.
Which one?
Is that safe to proceed?
Friday.
Okay.
Friday, yes,
Yeah.
morning.
Okay.
Well, then perhaps permit me to take a point of personal privilege. 50 years ago, my mother was an employee at the Department of Public Instruction, and she was very, very, very proud she was able to work for. So, and so forth. Today was kind of a neat homecoming, and say enough what a privilege it is to all of you find this. I yield.
Thank you. That's a nice closing. Any other questions or comments? All right, I will adjourn the meeting of the North Dakota Ethics Commission. Thank you all so much. It's been a good 2 days.